Imagine if someone called you a king and you actually were one. Well, that happened to the main character of our story today. His name is Doan, and he is one of the few people who became kings without inheriting the throne from anyone. Doan was born into a poor family in the middle of the 19th century in a small village of Yamateko in the kingdom of Uganda. The kid had no privileges or advantages in life. As an adult, he tried his hand at different jobs, but they all ended in failure. But our hero wasn't upset about it because he had an unshakable belief that one day he would become a great leader. And you know what? Life gave him a chance to prove himself. When Doan was just 18 years old, the kingdom found itself on the brink of a terrible war with neighboring Nepal. So the king at the time decided to assemble an army and prepare for battle. That's when Doan decided to join the military. He enlisted as a private and went through grueling training alongside other recruits. Doan wanted to make his country proud, and so he studied hard, learned how to use different weapons, and mastered hand-to-hand combat. The young man quickly stood out among his peers. His perseverance and desire to learn made him one of the best soldiers in his unit. And by the time the war began, Doan had risen to the rank of sergeant. During the war, he showed courage and cunning, always coming up with new tactics and strategies that helped defeat the enemy. People started calling him the Invincible Sergeant. After the war ended and everyone returned home, Doan didn't feel like celebrating the victory. Instead, he continued to train even harder, believing that a true warrior never stops honing their skills. At the same time, he knew there would be another war soon, and this time, he wanted to be ready for it. It took only a couple of years for the neighboring countries to recover from the previous war and form a coalition against the kingdom. The king again assembled an army, and once again, Doan was among its members. This time, the young man joined the artillery unit, where he quickly climbed a career ladder and eventually became the chief artillery officer. Thanks to his talent and skill, Doan managed to develop new and more effective ways to use artillery, which turned out to be very useful during the war. He successfully directed his troops in many battles, inflicting heavy losses on the enemy. Once again, Doan proved that he deserved the title of the Invincible Sergeant. However, despite the fact that Doan made significant contributions to the victory in the war, when it ended and everyone went home, he was forgotten. The king didn't even thank him properly for his service. To be fair, Doan wasn't upset about it. He had bigger dreams than recognition from the king. And now we'll tell you what those dreams were. While still serving in the army, Doan met a beautiful woman named Eva. Their love story is like something out of a movie. Two young people from different social classes who dared to defy the norms of society and go against the tide. Eva was the daughter of a wealthy landowner, while Doan was nothing more than a simple soldier. When their romance blossomed, she was already engaged to a man of her father's choice, but she broke off the engagement and chose to be with Doan because true love doesn't recognize social status or wealth. Doan and Eva got married and settled down in a small village. They lived modestly, but they were happy. Soon, their first child was born, a baby boy whom they named Mumkar. It seemed that nothing could disturb their happiness now. But here comes another twist in the story. One day, Doan came home to find his wife lying on the ground unconscious. He immediately called for help and rushed her to the hospital. Doctors did everything they could, but unfortunately, both the mother and the baby died. Doan was devastated. He couldn't understand why such a terrible tragedy had buffed. Overwhelmed with grief, he left the army and went to live in the forest. For several years, Doan wandered from place to place, trying to forget his pain. But the longer time passed, the more he realized that it was impossible to escape from the past. Then he decided to return home. Doan rebuilt his life. He remarried and had a son, whom he named Betrayal. It seemed that the worst period in his life was finally over, and that he could live out his days peacefully. But fate had other plans. The peaceful life of Doan and his family was shattered when the king died and his son ascended to the throne. The new ruler turned out to be a cruel and power-hungry tyrant who oppressed his people. The villagers couldn't take it anymore. They wanted to get rid of the oppressive king. Doan understood their pain and decided to help the people. With the support of some influential people, he organized a rebellion against the king. As a result, the rebels won and the young king was forced to flee. There was a moment of uncertainty, a power vacuum that could lead the country into chaos and civil war. Seeing that the people were looking to him for help, Doan realized that he had a choice to make. He could either step back and let others take control or step forward and assume the mantle of leadership. After much thought and soul-searching, Doan decided to accept the responsibility thrust upon him. On April 1st, 1901, Doan was crowned king. He took the title of King Tribhuvan and became the ruler of a vast empire that stretched from the Himalayas to the lowland. His coronation was a grand affair, attended by people from all walks of life, all eager to witness the crowning moment of this extraordinary man who had risen from humble beginnings to become their king. From the first days in office, the new king faced many challenges. The country was in ruins after the war and civil unrest. But King Doan wasn't afraid of difficulties. He was well aware that the task before him was immense. The country needed stability, security, and prosperity. However, despite the gravity of the situation, King Doan approached his duties with optimism and determination. He knew that to be a good leader, he needed to be fair, honest, and compassionate. First things first, he established a system of checks and balances to prevent any concentration of power in one person's hand. He also introduced measures to protect the rights and freedoms of his subjects. Moreover, King Doan was committed to improving the lives of his people. He introduced reforms to promote education, healthcare, and economic development. He also worked to modernize the army and the government administration. Despite the magnitude of his responsibilities, King Doan never forgot his roots. He remained humble and accessible to his people, always ready to listen to their concerns and offer support whenever needed. Throughout his reign, King Doan faced many challenges, both internal and external. There were rebellions, natural disasters, and threats from neighboring kingdoms. But through it all, King Doan remained steadfast and resolute. He made some controversial decisions, some of which were unpopular, but he always justified them with the greater good of the nation. One of the most significant challenges King Doan faced was a rebellion by a neighboring kingdom. The neighboring king wanted to expand his territory and gain control over the valuable resources of King Doan's kingdom. The neighboring king assembled a large army and launched an attack. But King Doan was prepared. He had modernized the army and trained his soldiers well. The battle was fierce, but King Doan's army emerged victorious. As news of his victory spread, people from all over the kingdom celebrated. They praised their king for his bravery, his strategic mind, and his commitment to justice. Despite winning the war, King Doan remained compassionate towards his defeated enemies. He offered them peace and amnesty, showing them that he was not driven by vengeance or hatred. Rather, he was motivated by a genuine desire for peace and harmony among the kingdoms. In the years that followed, King Doan's wisdom and diplomacy paid off. He established lasting peace with neighboring kingdoms, fostering trade and cultural exchange. He also played a key role in resolving conflicts and disputes, earning the respect and admiration of his peers. As King Doan's reign progressed, his kingdom flourished. Trade routes hummed with activity. Merchants from distant lands flocked to his markets, and artisans produced goods of exceptional quality. Agriculture thrived, leading to food surpluses and the establishment of the king's commitment to education led to the construction of schools and the appointment of learned teachers. His courts became centers of intellectual discourse, attracting scholars and thinkers from across the world. But perhaps King Doan's greatest legacy was the sense of unity and pride he instilled in his people. He emphasized the importance of preserving their cultural heritage while embracing the values of equality, justice, and compassion. Under his guidance, the kingdom became known for its religious tolerance and harmonious coexistence of diverse ethnic and cultural groups. So the guy who used to wander around the village as an unknown soldier and later became the invincible sergeant who won wars, then wandered through the forest as a grieving husband, ultimately became the enlightened King Tribhuvan who brought his country to prosperity. Doan's life serves as an example that no matter where you start in life, your actions, determination, and the goals you set can change your destiny. Even an ordinary soldier can become king if he is dedicated enough